Hi, my name is Scott Marker, and this is another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips. What it is I'm a franchise owner of a network in action, and it's out of Houston, Texas. I'm the first one here in the Treasure Valley, and it's just people like me bringing together a bunch of high caliber professionals that are experts in their field once a month, and trying to help grow our businesses. And through that, I meet a lot of really you know successful and smart people in their fields here in the area, and I want to just bring them onto the show and share the information with the listeners. So today's a perfect example. Joseph, introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Scott. I'm Joseph. I'm the owner of Strategic Wealth Designs, a financial service firm. We do all the traditional financial planning, but we focus also heavily on exit planning for business owners. And that comes with a lot of working with CPAs and stuff like that to do some tax planning and also philanthropic giving.
Cool. And so on the CPAs there, you're basically partners with them then, right? From
That's
what
correct.
conversations I've heard you talk about before. So kind of explain that. How do you partner with a CPA?
Just to, we as planners, tax planners, not tax advice givers,
Okay.
we
Right.
play in a different realm than CPAs do. So we want to come alongside them and say, hey, a business owner wants to accomplish X, Y, Z. So how do we help him do that in a tax efficient way? And so we just kind of brainstorm together different ways to mitigate taxes.
No, that's great because um di 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 to different degrees on different CPAs, or some of them don't even have to be CPAs. They have just straight accountants, or they have just bookkeepers and stuff. Then that's where you can come in wherever the gap is. That's where you can fill that in for them then. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, definitely, because we play in a different realm than some of the CPAs do, just because of the fact that we're trying to forward think, not today, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and before we started, I kind of chatted with you, and you helped me kind of come up with some things that might interest some business owners here in the valley. These are uh, we're here in the Treasure Valley, Idaho, Boise metro area, and any owners here, and that's something I've never asked you. I mean, how big area do you work with your clientele?
Actually, all over the United States. I'm having a
Okay.
couple conversations right now with some business owners in Arizona.
Well, cool. Well, then this can be anybody then. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Here in the Treasure Valley or anywhere in the United States. Well, awesome. So, here's the question: is when should you start your exit planning for your business as a business owner?
I like to, when I chat with business owners, I say start it when you first start your business. And I know that's
Yeah.
almost a bit of an oxymoron because you're starting out and you're not thinking about the eventual exit. But if depending on where you're at in the stage, whether you're in the growth stage, the startup phase, or the mature phase, starting it as soon as possible, but ideally between 3 and 10 years out.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard from um other people that do similar things to you in the past that's kind of resonated with me was is that a lot of times business owners will be in business for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and never really thought of any an exit plan. And then all of a sudden wake up and go, I'm burned out.
Mhm.
But the challenge is which we'll get into some other questions is now you might have taken your hands off the stealing wheel for a few years while you've been burned out. So maybe that's like you're saying, and I guess the importance of making sure you plan, put a plan into place and then adjust it as you go. Um, is so that you can always be looking, you know, forward and building the business to for that exit. I mean, I'm just kind of talking out loud there. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I say exit planning is a process, not a destination. And
Okay.
so most people think the exit planning is a destination. Oh, when I'm done, I'm done with the business, I'll sell then. But there's a 100% chance you're going to exit your business, whether
Yeah.
by default or design. And so being prepared for the default,
Right.
as
Right.
opposed to the design, is also part of that. And I think that goes into what you're saying. I'm burnt out. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some? what are some different exit options that you give people when you're talking to a business owner?
Yeah, and I'm gonna give a lawyerly answer. It depends. It depends on
I
what
know.
they
Yeah,
want
yeah, yeah.
to accomplish. Because again, we come alongside them as a guide, not as a
Okay.
dictator and tell them what to do. So really, there's five major categories.
Okay.
There's an inside transfer, and that could be either a key employee group,
Okay.
and that's important, or it transfers to children or child. And what does that look like? And then just as a side note, we look at estate equalization as well. And so just because you have a child within the business doesn't mean it's fair to give the other child that may not be in the business ownership equity upon your exit. So, there could be some challenges there. So we talked through some of those things. External transfer. So that could be, selling to, third party, whether it's M&A, venture capitalist, competitor, and we go from there. Liquidation, that's kind of a last resort, and that's typically what happens if you don't do any planning. And then ESOPs are really kind of neat, but you need to really have a cash flow intensive business to be able to do that, because you need to make sure that you're able to buy them out at any time. Yeah, and then those are kind of the five areas that we look at.
Cool. Yeah. And then how how do you I mean, let's say someone meets with you and just you resonate with them and they, something, um, uh, Joseph, I want you to, kind of help me out. How does that change from 5 years to 10 years?
Meaning their exit.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, if let's say they call you back, you talk to them once and I mean, how does the conversation change you said it's kind of like a plan, not a destination. So how does it change as the years go on? Like let's say you're just starting off, you're gonna have a conversation with them versus someone's been in business for 15 years and brings you in. So I guess that would be I'll rephrase it as a customer brings you in, and it could be the exact same customer, and they bring you in when they're just starting, right, to talk about things. And then the similar type customer brings you in 15 years later. What's the two different conversations you have with those different customers, business owners?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the 1 year person that they're kind of, I mean, I'm going to make the assumption that they're in a startup phase. And if they're in a startup
Yep.
phase, how do we protect your business right now? Make
Okay.
sure that your family's taken care of if something happens to you. How do you keep your key employees happy and not have turnover? And so that's a different conversation than the person that's been doing it 15 years. And, again, depending on what their trajectory is, they could be in the growth phase still, or maybe they're starting to enter in the mature stage. And so that's a different conversation. So, because the startups tend to be, they're putting in 80 hours. They're working real hard to get the business going. Once they get to a kind of a growth or mature stage, they need to take the hands off the wheel, so to speak. Because, the business owner that's working 15 years and working 80 hours still may not have a sellable business, because of the fact that they're doing too much, because a buyer wants to come in and know that it'll run without them.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah.
So yeah, okay. So you get two different conversations there. Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah, I've seen that too, where yeah, you have a business that the business is the owner, or the owner is like the 100% of the not 100%, but a major factor that the majority of the customers love the owner.
Yes, yes.
You know. So there's a quick question. So how if someone comes to you and they have a really big brand themselves personally as the owner, how and they want to figure out an exit plan in the next, 2 years. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's having a hard conversation. And if they're highly into it, meaning they're kind of the breadwinner, so to speak, and the rainmaker, I'll put it that way. It's having that hard conversation saying, hey, you need to put a key employee group together and trust your either sales team or your management team, depending on the type of business, and step away. And and it could be simple things like bringing in EOS implementers. How do we be able to go over the next 2 years and really get this solid to where you can step away? And that's one conversation we'd have. We'd have to take a look at the financials as well.
Yeah, there's um a local company that's on the radio a lot in the morning when I'm getting ready and listening, and that owner is definitely. I mean, he says his name all the time on all his advertisements and stuff, and he's done a good job of um just kind of telling people, hey, everybody's wanting to know what I'm doing. I'm not completely out, but I'm definitely not full time. But I'm not selling, but I'm not selling externally, but I am turning it over and selling part of it or the whole thing, or I can't remember, but to two key employees that combined have 20 years of experience with this company. And so I thought that was a pretty good way of somebody that I I I know the owner, nobody else in the company, and he's on the radio all the time. And anyway, I thought that was a pretty good way for him just to kind of, I don't know, like start saying that out loud to people so they know that, he's going to slowly transition out and that
Yeah.
his employees are going to transition in.
Daddy, can you get me a pen?
So what about like, what do you do when you sell a business? How do you like not get nailed with the taxes?
So that really comes with working with the CPAs and planning for it ahead of time. So a lot of
Okay.
people will deal with it afterwards, and or after the
Wrong,
LOIs. Yep,
wrong
and
answer.
exactly. So
We have
I
some
just sit there and
really
say,
great, we got some great like accountants in our group, right? Uh, 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 you know, and they always say that too, is that, don't do something like that, don't wait for the last minute and then do some major tax ramification deal. So,
mhm.
so
So it's really,
how do you help somebody? Like if they're gonna bring you in and tell you, hey, I'm gonna sell this, you know, in a year, how are you going to help them position themselves, or just kind of give them some guidelines to reduce their taxes?
I think you start the planning before you do any type of formal letter of intent. So
Okay.
before you sign a letter of intent, make sure that you're working with your tax professionals to be able to talk through that.
Okay.
For me on my side, a year is a little hard to start because it really depends. I mean, we have things that if you're charitably inclined, a year is easy.
Okay.
Um, but if you're looking for maybe income, like a grant or remainder annuity trust, and that comes in, so that it's going to take some time to work with your estate planning professionals to set up that trust to be able to then come get the income in down the road. There's others, if you know you're going to have growth over the next, say, 5 years, you can actually lock in and pin your value at what it is today, take the growth of that, and the growth will be tax efficient. I'll say that way. It won't be completely tax free, but there's just so many different strategies that come out there. Again, I come in with the lawyerly answer. It also depends on what they want to accomplish within their estate planning, exit planning goals.
Yeah, this is great stuff though, because I mean, I tell you, owners just they're a lot of times they're just in the forest, and they're deep into it every day, and they just need to talk to someone like you, and then partner also with, if their tax preparer or accountant or CPA is not um, uh, doing what they should do. I mean, you could even help them recommend somebody else that can partner with you. But yeah, it's just when you talk about a lot of these things, I'm sure a lot of them. It's the reason you exist is to help business out. But just the tax ramifications, I can just see um, how if you just sell it and you don't do any planning, you could just get whacked with taxes
Mhm.
and just um and then find out after the fact that, oh, I could have, donated part of this to something. And so talk about that. Like, so what you said, the charitable, how can you kind of help yourself doing that? Because I know you're big into that, helping people.
Again, if they're charitably inclined, it's just forethought and looking through that to be able to do it. So let's
So
just say
what's
it's,
that term?
it's
Say that term again.
charitably inclined,
Okay, charitably inclined.
right?
Okay.
So commercial cleaning business, $2.5 million. Quick story. They were gonna donate 10% of their business to it, and so we ran the numbers and we said, okay, this was great, but the tax ramifications or the tax benefit efficiency of it wasn't. It was okay, but we said, hey, what does it look like if you gave 50% of your business away? And that's a lot. I mean, it's a $2.5 million business. But the difference to their overall wealth on the sale of that business was $175,000.
Wow.
That's all they were going to lose by giving half their business away. And so what ended up happening basically is 8% went to taxes, 40% went to, and we're just talking federally, we're not talking state because that's a whole
Yeah.
other animal.
Right, right, right.
40% went to charity and 52% went to them, as opposed if they did no planning and didn't even, let's just say they weren't charitably inclined, they're getting hit with 37% tax rates. So we can drop that 37 to 8 and their overall wealth was only down by about 11%, 10 to 11%.
Wow, wow, wow. That's the type of stuff you just have to prepare for this stuff because who wants to give all their money away to taxes? I mean, that's just crazy, especially after working all your life for that and you're wanting to do something good with the money.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
uh, so
And I will say, as a side note too, those who have charities or private foundations, it's very important that there's some arm's length between the two. So you may have a nonprofit that you run or own or manage and have a business. You got to make sure that planning's done way in advance if you want to make sure that your nonprofit gets it, because you need to either step away from the board or give up control, stuff like that, years in advance. So that way it looks like a true gift as opposed to, hey, I'm just using the tax code liabilities
oh wow.
from the
The more we
IRS
talk,
perspective.
yeah, yeah. The more we talk, the more I go, well, yeah, you need to reach out to Joseph. There's just so many gotchas. It's so so how are some ways you can maximize the value of your company?
And again, it depends on where you're at, but the 80% of a business value is actually in the intangibles. So do you have a key employee group that's really, or a management group that really can run the business without you? Because again, that's going to hurt your value. Your customer capital. Do you have subscription model is very big these days, but do you have recurring revenue? The more recurring revenue that you have, the easier it is to increase your value, but also to making sure that your customer base is diversified. If 40% of your business is coming from one customer, that's
Yeah.
going to hurt your value, because if that customer ever leaves,
Yep.
that business isn't as valuable, and that buyer
Yep.
is going to want to make sure that they, don't get hit with that or hurt by that, I should say, by
Yep.
paying for
Yep.
something more. Structural capital, just making sure that your systems are in place. Is your HR documented? If could someone come in and run the business if something happened to you, and know where to go and find all that. And then social capital, the think about I live in Nampa, and think about the great city of Nampa, and there's some business owners that have been in the area for a long time.
Oh
That
yeah.
social capital, their community involvement, the fact that they've been around 20 or 30 years is going to hold much more weight than a business that's 5 years old. And the same
Right.
thing, maybe doing the same revenue and the same valuation, but it may come in lower because they're not as established as, say, the 25-year-old business that's here in the city.
Wow. Well, this has been great. I mean, can you think of anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd want to share? There's something else that,
Yeah, this is always a fun one, especially when I'm prospecting. I ask a business owner, what are the three universal questions that business owners have to ask, especially when it comes to exit planning. And so they're basically, who do you want to sell it to? When do you want to sell it to? And for how much? If you can't answer those three questions, you're not really quite ready for that exit yet.
and I love that too. And that keeps it simple though. But you're right. I mean, if you don't have that, you're not gonna, yeah. I mean, you're not ready to sell your business.
Mm-hmm. And as you get ready to exit, I think the other thing that business owners have to consider, and it can be a hard transition, especially if their identity has been wrapped up in the business for the last 20
Yeah.
years, which makes sense. 20, 30 years. I mean, it's been your baby. You've put in 40, 60, 80, 100 hours a week into
Yeah.
it for
Yeah.
years on end. And so starting those conversations, having a sounding board, with trusted individuals, whether it's your spouse or I know spouses actually wrote this on either a blog or on LinkedIn or email or LinkedIn blog, but just how spouses can be very vital in that transition, because they've sacrificed a lot as well to let the business owner be there and do that. And so now that the business is ready to sell, what are they going to do? Are they going to go fishing and community involvement, things like that start getting them thinking, because when every day becomes a Saturday, it gets boring really quick.
I love that one. I would like to try that though for just a few months.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Uh,
The business owners and individuals have worked hard to do that, but at some
yeah,
point, that's going to get real boring.
that's good. Well, hey, this has been great, Joseph. Really good. If any of the listeners wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
They can either call me at 208-604-3162 or Joseph at Strategic Wealth Designs, so plural with an S.com.
Perfect. And I'll have them in the show notes. So that way, if anybody didn't catch it, they don't have to replay it 6 times. They can just look at the show notes and I'll have
Right,
all the
there you
info.
go.
So, hey, I really appreciate it. And this has been another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips. And until next time, I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
All right, thanks.